Hey guys, Combatant 5 here again, and today we're taking a look at the countermeasures and defensive systems in the DCS F-14 Tomcat. So we'll start off with the defensive jammer. All of our defensive systems are on this right console here. Our defensive jammer is right here, and so we've got several positions. Right now it's currently in standby, so it's been warmed up. We can go ahead and set it to receive, and what the receive function will do is it will emit jamming energy. It's just a simple noise jammer whenever we get locked. If we want to repeat whenever, or if we want it to emit whenever we are swept, we will go to repeat, and that's pretty much all there is to that thing. Very simple very simple automated system, one of the more automated defensive systems you'll find. You also have your radar warning receiver panel here. We can set it to air intercept, or anti-aircraft artillery, unknown, or friend, and this will give us different ways to filter things. So normal, it will show everything. Air intercept, it will only show air-based radars. AAA, it will show ground-based radars. Unknown, it will show unknown contacts on our RWR, and friendly, it will show friendly contacts. And in this case, we don't actually have any, but it's beeping at us. So the next thing we've got is our Countermeasures Dispenser system, the ALR-69. So this is made up of two panels. We have our control panel right here at the top, and we have our programmer panel right there at the bottom. So you can see we have our counters, release switches, salvo flares. We'll get to this panel in just a second, but I'm going to run you through everything. Flare mode, and then power. Back here we have our actual programmer. So the programmer is pretty simple. It looks complicated when you first look at it, but it's extremely simple and it's very bare bones. So unlike a lot of other modern aircraft, the F-14 does not actually have a, I guess what you could call a data cartridge system. So for example, one of the things you'll notice when you first start up is that Jester is going to program all of your waypoints in. Well, same thing is true with our Countermeasures Dispenser system. So we've got to set up our programs. We have to set up what we want the system to know it has, and then from there we can sort things out. So first things first, let's start off with our chaff. So we have our chaff section here, and right now it is set to repeat, so we'll go to continuous, and continuous would just release all of our chaff until we're empty. We have our interval here, you can see. Then we have our quantity. So we have burst and salvo. Now the simplest way to think of this is that burst is the number of ejections per cycle, and S is the number of cycles. So for example, if I go to 2 with a 2 and just straight 2s across, so 2 bursts at a 1 second interval with 2 salvos at a 2 second interval, that will do 1 chaff, 1 second, another chaff, another second. It'll wait 2 seconds, and then it'll repeat. So we'll go ahead and show you guys that. Jump to the external view. There's 1 cycle. There's the second one. Pretty simple. The next thing we have is we have our jammer ejection programs. Now these are not currently implemented. They will be implemented after the F-18 gets them. It's an engine limitation, not an F-14 limitation. Then we have our flare setup. So the flares are a lot simpler than the chaff. Don't know whether they were just running out of space or didn't actually think that it mattered that much. Basically you have the quantity and then the interval. So like we can do a 4 quantity and then a 2 second interval. And if we jump to the external view, you'll see 1 flare, 2 seconds, another flare, 2 seconds, etc., etc. Very simple. And you'll notice that we've got counters here that are going to count down as well. And we can actually set that if we really want to. no real reason. It should reset automatically if the manual is to be understood. Finally, we have our setup dials. So as I mentioned, the F14 does not actually have a data cartridge, so we have to program when we start up what is actually located in what slots. So the F14 has two ejectors slots that are 10 countermeasures cartridges, and then another 2 that are 20 each. So if we zoom out to the outside, and I can't quite show you guys, there it is. You'll see it right to the left of the tail hook. Those are actually our countermeasures ejectors, and they're labeled left and right 10 and left and right 20. Don't ask me why, that's just the way they decided to label them. So right now we have left and right, or left 10, right and left 20 set to flares, and right 10 is set to chaff. Now the reason we are getting 40 chaff is we have the ALR-67 chaff ejector launch rails. Basically they are a missile rail that has a chaff ejector built into it, and it fits 140 chaff cartridges. They are a quarter the size of your normal chaff cartridges, so thus we have 40. And that is all set on the right 10 dial. So that's pretty much all there is to it. This switch right here just resets the whole system. Again, very simple. Now we have our ejection switches and our flare mode. So now, the flare mode sets who can eject chaff. So we have pilot, normal, and then I can't read what that says. I'll see if I can find it in the manual and stick it in an annotation here when I go to edit this. But basically the pilot allows the pilot to eject flares using his DLC button, and then the other two mean that he will eject chaff instead. The Rio will control the flares. Personally, I find it more useful if I'm flying as a pilot to have it set to pilot, because I've got a better idea of, oh hey, there's an infrared guided missile coming in, we need flares now. Then we have chaff. So again, you can see program, single, or standby. It's in the center position standby. These are spring-loaded switches, so they will return to the center. Same with flare, and same with jammer. Now, over here we have our modes. So we have off, manual, or auto for chaff. There is no auto mode for flares, because we don't have a missile warning system on this aircraft. So, very simple. The salvo flares switch will allow either the pilot or Rio to eject all of the flare cartridges currently on board the aircraft. Now, how do we know what our current chaff and flare loadout is after we rearm? Well, we can jump into the knee board and go to the right once. That's our initial loadout. So you'll see we can see right 10, 20, left 10 and 20 and right 20 are all set to flares. Right 10 is set to chaff, and we have the ALR-67 installed. So if you are going to use that launch rail, you are going to need to set right 10 to chaff. Now the base countermeasures system can only hold 60 total countermeasures, and it can do any loadout that you want as long as it is in base 10. So you can have 10 flares, 50 chaff, 20 flares, 40 chaff, 30 flares, 30 chaff, etc., etc. As long as you've got even numbers on each side that are divisible by 10, you're good to go. With the extra chaff launchers, you can hold a whole heck of a lot more. In this case, we had 40 chaff and about 60 flares when we started out. For obvious reasons, you'd probably want to change that to where you had roughly equal numbers, or more chaff, because you're probably going to use more of it. Let's see here, anything else I can talk about with the countermeasures panel or this? other than just jumping up to the front seat and showing you guys how to work with Jester with it. Not that I can think of, not that I have in my notes. So we'll go ahead and jump up to the front seat and we will go from there. Alrighty, we are in a cold jet on the ground in Dubai. Now, I figured I would cover this. I couldn't figure it out before. I just figured it out. I've already edited everything together, so that's why this is just going to kind of be a weird fade in, fade out. I've done all my recording for this video already. So, to cover what we're going to talk about real quick, this is setting up and rearming everything on the ground. So I'll go ahead and go into ground crew, rearm, refuel, and we'll tell them we want, say, 50 chaff, 150 flares. Or we want 60 flares and 140 chaff. Well, that's what we had already. So we'll go to 20 flares and 160. And we can go to 180. It's 20 flares, 180 chaff. Okay. They'll rearm it.
Copy.
Previous video got another question. Can you IFF things with your radar? Yes, you can. It's this button right here on display. DDD, detail data display, interrogate friend or foe. It'll show your friendly contacts differently than they would look otherwise. Hostile contacts will still look normal. Real quick blurb there while we're waiting. I will probably at some point do a Rio startup, but today is not that day. I'm not feeling that motivated to do one because I've got to learn the procedure. So, just got the rearming thing, so we'll go to our knee board. You can see flares, flares, chaff, chaff, so we'll change right 20 to chaff. In this case, it's already set there. And we will reset our dials here. To 60 and 30. And I believe that's right anyways. We can look. So we'll take 20 of this out, so that's 160, yeah, that's 40, 60, or 40, 60, and 20. So we'll go down to 20 on the flares, sorry. And that's all there is to it. So a little bit of math, and you can figure it out pretty quickly. So remember, if you need to see your actual loadout, it is on the, not the first page, but the first page to the right on your knee board. Thanks. Alrighty guys, so we are now in the front seat. Now we will be, or I'm going to go ahead and turn the aircraft around just so we don't leave the Gulf here. And we will go ahead and set up our automatic flight control system. I do plan to kind of cover that in a little bit more detail after I understand how it all works. Because again, the manual is kind of thin on, you know, documentation there. This has been my biggest complaint about the F-14 manual as it sits, is that it's a little bit light on documentation and on how stuff works. And thus I've made these tutorials for you guys. So, we are now turned around. And we'll just set it to on, heading, altitude, nose wheel steering to hold our current altitude. And we'll start on. Okay, so now Jester will have an option called CMS and RWR, and this will show you this whole page. Now we can set our jammer to transmit.
Copy.
We can set our jammer to standby. I'm going to leave it in transmit. We can set our RWR display type. We'll go ahead and set it to airborne interceptor.
Okay.
It's an F-14. What are you going to do? Go bomb somebody? Sorry about that. We will go to the CMS control order. And now you can see what he's going to do. Now, this will be what Jester will do with your countermeasures. So you can either tell them, hey, don't use any flares, stay tight with them, release them singly or release them in programs. You can tell them to don't release any chaff, or at least release the bare minimum, release a single chaff, or release programs. I'm just going to leave that alone for now. Programs would probably work best if you're trying to have him do all the legwork with it. Set flare program. This will tell or allow you to set up the flare program the way you want. So 2 for 2 seconds, that's going to be 2 flares over, or with a 2-second interval. 4 flares for 2 seconds. Again, 4 flares, 2-second interval between releases. 10 flares, 2 seconds. 10 flares with 2-second interval, so on and so forth. We also have the set chaff program, which is pretty much the same. You can see we have a number of programs to choose from. So let's see here, let's find one. Again, I can't remember what the R stands for. It'll be in an annotation below. We have 2 chaff with a 0.12 second delay, and then 4 bursts with a 4-second delay between bursts. 2 chaff every 0.12 seconds, 8 bursts, and 4 seconds between bursts, so on and so forth. Finally, we can go up to flare mode, and this will allow us to set it to pilot, normal, or multi. And then we can go to CMS mode and go to manual, auto, or off. So that's all there is to it with that system. And that's pretty much all there is to know about doing it with Jester. I'll go ahead and demonstrate in an engagement how to use Jester with the CMDS system to get the most out of it. Alrighty guys, we're back in the front seat. We've got Jester in the back. Now, I have set up a real quick interception mission. We are being intercepted by a MiG-21, 12 o'clock. Go ahead and open up the map, and you can't see him because I've got the fog of war on. So we don't know where he is, we don't know we're being intercepted. We're going to pretty much run into him when he finds us. Now, I am going to go ahead and set up Jester in our countermeasure system. Oh, he spotted him.
Roger.
So we'll set our jammer to transmit. We will set our RWR to airborne interceptor. Roger. And again, we will go flare mode to pilot.
Roger.
And we'll give him authorization to use the chaff on programs. And we'll go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and flip on my TID. And Jester, go ahead and give me a 50-mile scan. And we are not going to engage him with Phoenixes this time. We are going to go for a Sparrow engagement. To that end, I have 3 Sparrows on board. Now the reason I'm doing this, you'll actually get to see him use chaff as we go. You'll kind of hear it in the background. And then I'll probably also end up having to drop some flares. So, that's all there pretty much is to it. We'll just kind of go for the engagement.
You got it. Got lock. Target 34 miles.
And I don't know what that is. Sweet, sweet 1,000-knot closure, though. Now, one thing worth remembering with the Tomcat, you do have a very limited amount of distance that you can actually maneuver each side of center line.
Target 25 miles.
While I am keeping him centered on my HUD, I am going to, after I fire, start maneuvering a little bit. Now I'm going to let him fire first, though, because it makes more sense. Stroke the burners just a bit.
Target, 14 miles.
14 miles. $10
Spike, right on our nose.
Missile,
Party
missile,
time.
defensive.
Missile, 12 o'clock. Hot, break right. All right, switching to PSTT.
So you can see there I'm offsetting, and then I'm going to pull it right back around. We're flaring. He's chaffing. My goal here is to keep my lock and also get the missile off the rail. So we're going to go ahead and fire.
3 miles.
Fox 1. So we pull through.
That's a fish bed.
Fish bed, fish bed. And he's gone.
Flash. The bandit is going down.
So what we'll do is we'll jump into the back and I'll show you that he actually did drop chaff there. So we're in the back now. And you can see our chaff quantity is down to 25 from 40. So, very simple. He will go ahead and automatically deploy chaff, helpfully, and it just makes your life a little bit easier as a pilot. He'll also spot missiles for you, as you saw. So, guys, thanks again for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to stick them down in the comments below. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability, and see you guys again.